Hi there and welcome to Easy Mind, Easy Life. Now, something else that just came up as I finished off that video. What if the reason this parent, whichever it was that you started this process with in the last video, what if the reason that you think they mistreated you or they couldn't love you the way you felt you needed to be loved isn't really the reason why they didn't? What if this whole time you've been believing that this is the reason and it has nothing to do with that at all? Okay, so I'm going to walk you through my situation, okay? Because this was something I realized only very recently. I only have one sister, right? When I was 5 years old, she was born. Now, the moment she was born, my mum's whole attention was on this new baby, right? On my sister. And for whatever reason, I know mum's explained it to me, but it's just the reason's not relevant, right, to what we're doing here. I wasn't involved in any of her activities. I wasn't allowed to feed her. I wasn't allowed to help change her. I wasn't allowed to do anything with this baby. Mum just wanted me to go outside and play and let me just, allow her to do her work, right? What she needed to do with this baby. But babies are really time consuming, right? They take up a lot of time, a lot of attention. It's not something that you can just bring into the world and put it in a cot there and then just ignore it for a couple of weeks, right? Babies just don't work that way. But I was 5, right? And I didn't have the memory of my mum doing that for me when I was born, right? I couldn't remember all that. At 5, all you remember pretty much is that present moment in front of you, right? And what was happening at the time was my mum was spending all this time with this new baby and she no longer had time for me. Now, what I took away from that was that I was no longer wanted. I was no longer loved, right? I was like an old toy, outdated old toy that she no longer wanted to play with, right? This is from the eyes of a 5-year-old, right? She didn't want me anymore. That was it. And so I went through all my adult life with that belief that she didn't love me, she didn't want me anymore, right? My whole adult life until I had my daughter, which was in my 40s, right? So I went through at least 35 years of thinking that I wasn't loved by this woman, right? By my mother. Now, if I was to confront her about that at any point in time, that would be devastating to her. Because what I realized recently in a conversation with my sister, because she's not talking to me, but I sent her a message. And in the message, I was trying to tell her that I understand, but what she doesn't know, right, is that I've spent my whole life thinking that my mum didn't love me because my sister was born. And I honestly thought in my mind that she preferred her. She had a lot more in common with my sister, right? These were all the things I was making up in my mind. It wasn't something that anybody told me, right? This was what I was making up as a child in my mind from this situation, right? But it turns out the more I looked at it, the more I realized that my sister doesn't know that my mum loves her. She thinks I'm the favorite. And when I stop to think about that, I think that's hilarious, right? It's just so funny because the thing was, right, through school, I was really good at school. I loved reading and I loved learning and I was just good at school, right? I was a good kid, I wasn't naughty, I didn't play up or anything, but I was just really interested in learning. So I was like a teacher's dream, right? The one student that sits at the front that just wants to know everything, because I was so hungry for knowledge, So, what I observed through my childhood was that when she was old enough to get to school, in her childhood years, my mum was always comparing her to me. Always. Why can't you be more like your sister? Your sister likes to read. Look how well she's doing at school. Why can't you be more like your sister? And so she grew up thinking that I was the favorite, that I was the preferred child. you know. And then my mum had this thing about putting things in order. My dad was first, so she loves him more, and then I was next, and then my sister, you know, like I don't even understand what that has to do with anything, the order of anything. But she seems to think that telling me that I was next makes me feel more important, which in turn, you know, it makes my sister feel like what? She's what? The last one? So she gets like the bottom of the barrel, you know? It's like, it doesn't make any sense, you know? Your kids are your kids, you love them. That's it. There's nothing else. And you love them all the same because they're all yours, right? Some might challenge you more, and that's okay. That's what they're here for. They're here to challenge you, right? And others, they are similar, and you have a lot in common, and you can share a lot with them. But there's no friction, there's no challenge, you know? Our children, they all come for different reasons. Same as our partners, come for all different reasons. So, going back, I just found it hilarious one day that I realized she's not talking to me. She's angry with me, my sister, because I'm the favorite. My mum preferred me. I was the favorite. And she grew up in my shadow, so to speak. In her eyes, you know? So that's the whole scenario. When I realized all of that, I understood, you know, and you have to factor into all of that my mum lost both of her parents. Both, not just one, but both, when she was 5 years old. So imagine going into the world. At 5 years old, you've lost everything that means anything. Your parents, right? At 5, she lost them. Gone. They passed away. They were taken away. And then she goes into life and she meets my dad. And then she has us. So of course she did the best that she could. You know, that she couldn't express love out of fear. That was her experience. You know, that was her experience. She was so afraid to love because the two people she loved the most were taken away from her at 5. Can you imagine the impression that leaves on a child's mind? Can you imagine how devastating that would be? And so as much as she wanted to have children and she had us, she loved us as best she could. I can honestly say that. You know, she gave us everything she could, but the affection, the expression of affection and how we needed it, my sister and I, is what we didn't receive. And so both of us went into the world thinking that we weren't loved, that the other one was preferred. In my mother's eyes. You know, in her eyes, probably because I was the first, you know, and the sun shone out of my butt, according to her, right? According to my sister, you know. You listen to my mum and she's everything, right? She thinks she's, you know, amazing. And I'm dog poo, you know, basically. And yet to me, I was cast aside. As soon as my sister was born, she had all this time with this baby and she had no time for me anymore because I wasn't included in any of the activities and I was just told to go play. It's like I wasn't wanted. She didn't want me there. You know, she didn't want to share this precious baby that she just got. That's how it felt to me as a child. And it wasn't until I had my daughter in that first year and I realized how time-consuming it is to have a newborn baby that I thought, oh, wow. Not only that, but I realized she did all that for me 5 years before that. She had already done all that for me. Spending every single minute attending to every single need. I received exactly the same treatment. It was no different. I knew that as soon as I had my daughter and I went through that first year. I knew. That's when I realized, oh, she did love me. She did. I just couldn't see it because it wasn't shown in a way that I could understand. Do you see? But the love was there. The love is there. It's just my mum's too scared, to open up. That fear is still in her. That love is taken away. If you love something too much, it'll be taken away, So it's really understanding the other person and where they were at when you came. So that was my story. But we're going to go through a few different scenarios for you so that you can hopefully resonate with one of them, then start to move out of that position of you're the victim. And if you need to, put that person in the victim's seat, right? They're the victim. At least move yourself out of there. Start to observe it as an outsider rather than you being the one in it. Okay? Let's get you out of that position, out of the driver's seat. Let's get you out of that car. Put them in the car, driving that car, and you just observe. Okay? Because something happens when you become the observer and you're no longer the person in that victim state. Becoming the observer is like watching a movie. All of a sudden there's a detachment from it. And that's what we're trying to get you to. So you can get to that level of forgiveness that we're trying to get to. All right, my darlings? I love you guys. Remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the messages. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.